My dad confined me and my sibling in the cellar for half a dozen years, labeling us as monsters, and later attempted to lower us into an abandoned pit to complete his scheme. When I questioned my mother about why she stood by and observed everything, she merely gazed at her mug and remarked, "Mattresses are reserved for individuals of importance." I remained silent. That occurred nearly a decade earlier. Recently, she passed away in an elderly care facility with nobody attending her burial. How did you realize your dad wasn't female? Father, my dad imprisoned every girl in the cellar since he claimed females weren't worthy of daylight. By the moment I broke free, I'd existed in shadows for 6 full years. Father consistently viewed women as possessions. He forced Mother to rest on the linoleum in the cooking area because sleeping platforms are meant for those who count. He forbade us girls from dining at the furniture, insisting we ought to appreciate leftovers on the floor. When my initial menstruation arrived at age 12, he declared I was now utterly valueless and required concealment where nobody could witness my disgrace. He'd call us the underground beasts and require us to hide our visages if we ever ascended, as our feminine traits could taint his boys. When my sibling Faith reached 13, Father declared we were becoming too mature to pollute the higher levels. He completed updating the lower space with external bolts. Females are suited for below ground, he stated. Similar to earthworms, you'll adapt to existence without illumination. He shoved us downward on the steps and secured the entrance. Mother observed from the meal preparation zone, uttering nothing. She'd been shattered long before. The lower area included a commode, a basin, and a pair of pads on the cement surface. No openings for light, no lamps save for one globe Father managed from above. He'd activate it for 60 minutes daily as we consumed whatever edibles he tossed downward. For the remaining hours, we dwelled in total obscurity. Faith and I clutched palms without cease, frightened of separating in the void. Residing beneath the surface eroded us gradually. Our vision became extremely reactive, turning the hourly glow into torment. Our dermis paled from absence of rays. We forgot the passage of hours, unaware if it was morning or evening overhead. Father occasionally abandoned us in blackness for multiple days as discipline until we pleaded via the barrier. He'd chuckle and comment that burrowing animals didn't require brightness regardless. We received permission to ascend monthly for a brief 10-minute cleanse. Father would cover our eyes initially, claiming we weren't entitled to view his residence. Faith suffered intense lack of vitamin D, her skeleton weakening until movement caused distress. I began experiencing anxiety episodes in the gloom, breathing rapidly until I fainted. Father accused us of exaggeration and reduced our illumination period to half an hour. Following 3 years below, Faith became ill, severely ill. She suffered a persistent high temperature, expelling crimson fluid in the shadows. I hammered on the barrier for extended periods, imploring for aid. Father eventually descended, glanced at her briefly, and accused her of pretense. But upon her convulsions beginning, even he became alarmed. He couldn't permit her demise in his lower domain. He masked our sight and transported Faith upward. I overheard him instruct Mother to contact their acquaintance who worked as a medical attendant, not an actual medical center. Upon the attendant's arrival, I heard her exclaim in shock. She insisted on knowing why a 16-year-old appeared as if confined in a cavern. Father explained we possessed an uncommon ailment, rendering us sensitive to rays. The attendant doubted him, but provided care nonetheless. She murmured to me that she'd return. The attendant notified authorities, and youth protection arrived the following day. Father attempted to block their access to the lower level, asserting it was inundated. But they forced their way and discovered our confinement. The examiners were appalled. They recorded all details. The container we utilized when the commode overflowed. The marks on the barriers where we'd attempted to tally days. The stained imprints on the entrance from my repeated striking until my palms bled. We were extracted promptly and admitted to care. Physicians noted we exhibited nutrient shortages typical of abduction survivors. Our vision suffered damage from prolonged shadows, necessitating protective lenses. Faith's framework resembled that of an aged female in fragility. Yet we were liberated. Father faced attention, and Mother was judged incapable. We relocated to a temporary residence filled with glass panes. I believed we were secure. I was rediscovering how to function in brightness, how to stroll outdoors without fear. Faith was gaining resilience. Then one evening, I awoke to discover Father looming above my resting place. He'd secured release on bond and infiltrated. "You believe you can reside here among genuine folks?" He murmured. "You're subterranean monsters. You fit in the shadows." He administered a substance that rendered my extremities sluggish. I attempted to yell, but managed only a murmur. He transported me to his vehicle, where Faith lay senseless in the rear. While driving, he outlined his fresh strategy. He'd acquired land in a different region, featuring an ancient excavation tunnel. 60 feet beneath, he mentioned. "Nobody will detect your cries there. Nobody will locate you." I struggled to maintain awareness as he depicted the tunnel. "No ladders. Merely a cord. No sanitation. Just a pail on a hoist. No braitnis whatsoever. Permanently. You desired departure from the lower space," he remarked. Thus I located something profounder. He had already cast our possessions into the abyss. Provisions and liquid for perhaps 30 days. Following that, would perish from hunger in the void unless we developed appreciation. The vehicle halted on vacant terrain. I spotted the timber lid over the excavation in the beams. Father extracted Faith initially. She was beginning to stir, whispering my name. He uncovered the tunnel lid, and I perceived only infinite emptiness beneath. "Females precede," he stated, encircling the cord around Faith. "Fear not. You'll possess one another, for whatever duration you endure." As he commenced descending my sibling into the boundless shadows, she cried my name, the noise reverberating upward from the depths. I attempted to inch toward them, but my impaired limbs failed. All I managed was observing as my sibling vanished into the abyss, her cries diminishing. Father pivoted to me with a cord, grinning. "Your opportunity," he remarked. "Time to return." My digits scraped the soil, seeking an anchor as Father neared with the cord. The compounds rendered all actions like navigating viscous fluid. Faith's fearful tone echoed from the tunnel, repeating my name continuously, each call softer than prior. Father encircled the cord about my midsection, his motions systematic and familiar. I flailed feebly, succeeding in deflecting his grasp, but he merely chuckled and seized my arms. The vehicle beams projected elongated silhouettes across the desolate soil, rendering the tunnel entrance even gloomier. I clamped teeth firmly on his limb when he bent near. He swore and struck me across the face, causing sparkles in my sight. The coppery flavor of crimson filled my oral cavity. As he tended his limb, I tumbled laterally, distant from the tunnel. My limbs remained uncooperative, but survival instinct countered whatever he'd administered. He clutched my lower leg and hauled me back to the void. I embedded my nails into the earth, creating furrows in the soil. Tiny stones abraded my hands. The cord about my midsection constricted as he fastened it more firmly. From far in the tunnel, Faith had fallen silent. The quietude exceeded her cries in horror. I propelled my unbound leg, striking Father in the joint. He faltered, but retained hold. Rather, he positioned atop my limbs, immobilizing them while completing the cord's security. The tunnel entrance lay mere steps away now. I sensed the chill breeze ascending from it, detected the moist soil and deterioration. Father examined the cord, ensuring durability. He linked it to the vehicle's guard, intending to descend me gradually like with Faith. I seized a fistful of soil and hurled it at his visage. He choked and cleared his vision, granting me moments to address the cord tie. My digits were awkward from the compounds, but urgency propelled them. The tie slackened marginally before he regained composure and struck my hand aside. He pulled me to the precise brink of the tunnel, my limbs suspended over the boundary, flailing at mere atmosphere. I viewed the cord vanishing into the gloom where faith descended. Father situated himself rearward, prepared to thrust. I rotated abruptly, employing my remaining vigor to clutch his garment. If I descended, I'd drag him along. But he anticipated that. He detached my digits sequentially, then propelled me rearward. For an instant, I balanced at the boundary, partially within and partially without the tunnel. My hands located a sturdy root extending from the wall. I clung desperately while Father attempted to force me fully downward. The root was aged and somewhat decayed, commencing to detach from the soil. Father crushed my digits with his foot. I wailed, but refused release. He crushed again, and I sensed fractures. The agony dispersed some compound haze from my thoughts. I oscillated my limbs, seeking any support on the tunnel surfaces. My foot contacted something firm, a stone outcrop just beneath the entrance. I pressed upon it, elevating myself mildly. Father bent to dislodge my fractured digits from the root. His countenance sneered sufficiently that I detected the brew on his. Exhalation. I expelled crimson into his vision and lifted myself with my intact hand. He recoiled, providing room to position my elbows on firm soil. But the compounds and fatigue prevailed. My arms trembled fiercely, scarcely supporting my mass. Father recuperated and seized the cord still bound about my midsection. Instead of thrusting, he began elevating me from the tunnel. I comprehended his intent. He sought better alignment for a precise descent. No opportunity for clutching roots or locating supports if he released me from the middle. I became inert, rendering myself burdensome. He groaned with exertion, hauling me over the terrain. The cord chafed my dermis through my attire. When he halted to readjust his hold, I rotated sharply leftward, entangling the cord about his limbs. He attempted to extricate, but only ensnared further. His irritation mounted, rendering him reckless. While he labored to liberate his limbs, I inched toward his vehicle. My fractured digits agonized with each motion, but I compelled advancement. If I reached the operator's position, perhaps I could depart, secure assistance for faith. Father disentangled and pursued. He intercepted me at the vehicle's guard, where the cord's opposite end detached. He compressed my countenance against the frigid alloy, utilizing his bulk to restrain me. Something appeared unusual regarding how the father succeeded in infiltrating a temporary residence and abducting both females without detection. Temporary residences typically feature protective protocols and several guardians present, so I'm intrigued how he executed that so discreetly. The stance inspired a notion. I clutched the cord at its vehicle connection and tugged forcefully. The abrupt strain caused Father to falter. I tugged anew, employing the cord as a lift mechanism. He needed to retreat to maintain equilibrium. I continued tugging, compelling his relocation from me. The cord between us became rigid. He recognized my action and advanced, but I flattened to the soil. He stumbled over me and collided with the vehicle's guard solidly. While disoriented, I addressed the tie linking the cord to the guard. This was less complex than the one about my midsection. My intact hand manipulated it, while my fractured digits pulsed ineffectively. Father cleared his mind and reached for me anew. I propelled rearward, impacting him in the abdomen. He bent, wheezing. The tie released in my grasp. Now the cord attached solely to me, not the vehicle. I commenced inching distant from the tunnel, trailing the cord. Father recuperated and trod on the cord, halting me abruptly. He started reeling me back to the void, palm over palm, as if capturing prey. My intact hand located a pointed stone. I seized it and began severing the cord about my midsection. The threads were dense and resilient. Father hauled more intensely, sliding me through the soil. My attire elevated and stones abraded my midriff bare. The tunnel entrance neared. I severed urgently at the cord, sensing certain fibers yielding. Father executed a powerful haul that shifted me multiple feet instantly. My limbs approached the boundary anew. I discarded the stone and clutched a minor shrub near the tunnel. Its foundations were superficial, and it began detaching promptly. But but it decelerated me sufficiently to secure another grip, a semi-interred wheel from ancient unlawful disposal. Father approached nearer, maintaining cord tension. He concluded amusements. His expression displayed icy resolve as he readied for a concluding thrust. I encircled my arms about the wheel, aware it was my ultimate stabilizer. He jerked the cord harshly. The power shifted me inches, but the wheel endured. He jerked anew, more forcefully. I sensed my hold diminishing. My fractured digits couldn't assist in retention. The compound still rendered all hazy and sluggish. From deep in the tunnel, I detected Faith expel air. She remained vital down there, anticipating my rescue, or companionship. The noise provided a burst of frantic vitality. When Father hauled anew, I abruptly released the wheel and surged toward him rather than opposing. The unforeseen looseness in the cord caused him to stagger rearward. I collided with his limbs, toppling him. We tumbled in the soil, contending for dominance. He possessed greater strength, but the compounds influenced my discomfort reaction as well. I couldn't perceive half the impacts he delivered. My fractured digits curved incorrectly when I attempted seizure, but I persisted in combat. He ultimately restrained me, positioned on my torso. His hands addressed the cord, readying to haul me the concluding distance. The tunnel entrance adjoined us now. I could observe celestial points in the dark circle, so distant above where Faith must reside. I recalled an element from our basement years. Father invariably stored his vehicle openers in his forward left compartment. Invariably. It was a routine Faith, and I had committed to memory during monthly ascents, constantly seeking data that might aid eventually. My intact hand darted to his compartment. He attempted obstruction, but I possessed the openers. I compressed them firmly, the alloy borders slicing my hand. Then I propelled them with maximum force into the tunnel shadows. The openers vanished soundlessly into the abyss, consumed by the dark. Father's expression shifted from bewilderment to fury when he grasped what I'd done. Without those openers, he couldn't operate the vehicle. We were stranded far from civilization. On land he'd covertly purchased. His escape scheme was ruined. He bellowed and clamped his hand around my neck. I scratched at his arms with my uninjured hand while my shattered fingers dangled uselessly. Dark patches flickered in my sight, deeper than the pit beside us. The grip on my throat tightened as Father's face contorted with wrath above me. My vision narrowed, but I forced my good hand to keep searching, groping the ground. Blindly, my fingers found a small pebble, and I swung it feebly at his temple. The strike was weak, but it caused him to shift his weight slightly. That shift was enough. I thrust my hips upward, using the force to roll us sideways. We tumbled perilously close to the pit's edge. Father released my neck to steady himself, and I gasped for breath, my lungs searing. The compound still weighed heavily in my system, but adrenaline and oxygen deprivation sharpened my focus a bit. Father rose first, striking my ribs with his boot as he stood. I curled inward, shielding my abdomen while struggling to breathe. He circled me like a hunter, his breaths heavy with exertion and rage. The vehicle's beams cast stark shadows across his face, making him appear even more monstrous than usual. I tried to stand, but my legs gave way. The compounds made my muscles feel like liquid. Father seized my hair and began dragging me back toward the pit. Each tug sent sharp pains through my scalp. I dug my heels into the soil, resisting, but his strength overwhelmed me. My good hand found a larger stone this time. I twisted in his grasp and slammed it down on his foot with all my remaining force. He roared and let go of my hair, hopping on one leg. I crawled away as fast as I could, which wasn't fast at all. The cord still bound around my waist trailed behind, snagging on rocks and roots. Father recovered quickly and grabbed the cord, using it to pull me back. I rolled onto my back and kicked at him with both feet. One kick struck his shin, but it barely slowed him. He wrapped the cord around his hand for a better hold and tugged harder. I recalled the sharp stone I'd used to cut the cord earlier. It had to be nearby. My hand swept the ground frantically as Father dragged me closer to the pit. My fingers found it just as my feet reached the edge again. I hacked at the cord with desperate fervor. Father noticed and lunged forward, trying to seize the stone. I rolled away, keeping the stone, pressed against the cord, feeling more fibers break. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed until I thought the bones would snap, but I held on. We fought for control of the stone. Father's greater strength was prevailing. But then I heard Faith's voice from the pit again, faint but alive. The sound distracted Father for a moment. I yanked my hand free and slashed the stone across his forearm, drawing blood. He swore and pulled back, inspecting the wound. I used the moment to cut through the last strands of cord. It fell away from my waist, freeing me from its tether. But I was still too impaired to flee, and we both knew it. Father's expression shifted from fury to calculation. He walked to his vehicle and returned with a torch, shining it down the pit. I could hear him muttering about the depth and checking the cord Faith was tied to. The beam vanished into the darkness without revealing the bottom. I tried to crawl toward the vehicle while his back was turned, but my movements were sluggish. Father heard me and turned, his face now eerily calm, which was somehow worse than his anger. He approached and grabbed my ankle, dragging me back toward the pit with deliberate patience. My fingers clawed at the ground, finding a protruding tree root. Father pulled harder, and I felt my shoulder strain from holding on. He stepped on my hand, grinding it into the dirt. I bit back a scream and clung tighter. He increased the pressure until I had to release. This time, he dragged me to a different side of the pit, where the ground was smoother with fewer roots or rocks to grasp. He positioned me at the edge again, but instead of pushing immediately, he sat beside me, catching his breath. He outlined his new scheme in detail, describing how he'd lower me slowly, letting me dangle before dropping me the rest of the way. He wanted me to reflect on my choices, how I'd brought this upon myself by trying to live above ground. I used his speech to let more of the compounds dissipate. My mind was clearing slightly, though my limbs remained heavy. I flexed my fingers and toes, assessing my control. Not much, but perhaps enough. Father stood and grabbed under my arms, lifting me partially. My legs hung over the pit's edge. The cold air from below made me tremble. He held me there, suspended between solid ground and the void, relishing his dominance. I went limp, becoming dead weight in his hands. The sudden shift forced him to adjust his grip, pulling me slightly forward. I used that momentum to hook my leg around his knee and pull. He stumbled, but didn't fall, dropping me on his solid ground to regain his balance. I rolled away from the edge and struggled to my hands and knees. Father kicked me in the stomach, knocking the air out of me. I collapsed, gasping, but kept rolling, putting distance between us and the pit. He followed slowly, knowing I couldn't escape far. The compounds were fading gradually, but not fast enough. My broken fingers pulsed with each heartbeat. I tasted blood in my mouth from biting my tongue during the struggle. Father grabbed my hair again and dragged me back. This time, he positioned me parallel to the pit's edge, planning to roll me in sideways. I twisted in his grip, making it harder for him to control my movement. He struck me hard across the face, making my ears ring. The blow actually helped clear my head further. Pain was cutting through the compound haze. I focused on that clarity, using it to strategize. Father was tiring too. His movements were slower, his breathing more labored. He was older, unfit from years of unchallenged control in his home. Talk about flipping the script with a cord trick. She went from being bound like a parcel to using that same cord like she's in a twisted tug-of-war, making Father stumble backward like he's in a clumsy dance. Then she pulls the ultimate move, dropping flat, so he crashes face first into his own vehicle's guard. He tried to roll me toward the pit, but I spread my arms and legs wide, making myself hard to move. He grunted with effort, trying to force my limbs together. I kept spreading them out again each time he shifted to a different limb. Frustrated, he straddled me, using his weight to pin me down. His hands went for my throat again, but this time I was prepared. I tucked my chin and bit his hand hard when it came close. He jerked back, shaking his hand in pain. I used his distraction to drive my knee hard between his legs. He doubled over, rolling off me with a groan. I crawled away as fast as I could, faster than before. The compounds are definitely wearing off, though I was still far from normal. Father recovered quicker than I'd hoped. He caught my ankle just as I reached the vehicle's rear wheel. I kicked back with my free foot, hitting him in the chest. He held on, but the impact pushed him back slightly. I kicked again and again, each strike weaker, but keeping distance. He changed tactics, grabbing both ankles and dragging me backward. I twisted onto my back and sat up, reaching for his face. My broken fingers were useless, but my good hand found his eyes. I pressed my thumb against his eye socket, making him release my legs to protect his face. I scrambled under the vehicle, hoping the tight space would hinder his reach. Father dropped to his knees, reaching beneath. His arms were longer, and he grabbed my shirt. The fabric began to rip as he pulled. I wrapped my arms around the vehicle's drive shaft, holding on as my shirt tore away. Father cursed and reached further, trying for a better grip. I kicked at his hands, striking his fingers. He pulled back, then tried from another angle. The ground under the vehicle was littered with oil stains and debris. I found a rusty metal piece, likely from an old exhaust. I gripped it like a blade, slashing at Father's hands when they neared. He withdrew after a solid hit, his palm bleeding. He stood and circled the vehicle, trying to anticipate my exit. I stayed centered, watching his feet shift from side to side. His impatience grew, making his movements predictable. When he committed to the passenger side, I quickly crawled out the driver's side. I pulled myself up using the vehicle's mirror, my legs shaky but working. Father came around the front, his face a mask of cold rage. Blood dripped from his hand and forearm where I'd cut him. His clothes were torn and soiled from our struggle. He advanced slowly, pushing me toward the pit again. I moved along the vehicle, keeping it between us. We circled it like a deadly game of chase. My legs grew stronger each minute, but I was still too slow to outrun him. Father suddenly reversed direction, catching me off guard. He grabbed my arm as I tried to backtrack. His bloody hand left red streaks on my skin. I twisted in his grip, using a move I'd seen in a film during our brief foster care time. It wasn't perfect, but it loosened his hold enough for me to break free. I stumbled backward, and my foot caught on something. I looked down to see the cord that had been around my waist earlier. An idea sparked through the clearing compound fog. I grabbed the cord and ran around the vehicle, Father close behind. I looped the cord around the front guard as I passed, then continued to the rear. Father followed, unaware of my plan. I wrapped the cord around the rear guard too, creating a trip line. When Father rounded the back, his foot caught the cord and he fell hard. His head hit the ground with a dull thud. He lay still for a moment, dazed. I seized the chance. I grabbed the torch he'd dropped and brought it down on his knee. He howled and curled up, clutching his leg. I backed away, still holding the torch like a weapon. Father tried to stand, but his injured knee buckled. He fell back, cursing. I saw the calculation in his eyes as he reassessed. I was more mobile now, and he was hurt. He began crawling toward me, using his arms to drag himself forward. His relentless drive was terrifying. Even injured, he wouldn't stop. I backed up further, trying to keep distance while searching for another weapon or advantage. My back hit something solid, the wooden lid of the pit, propped against a rock where Father had placed it. I glanced between him and the heavy disc. It was thick, probably 40 or 50 pounds. In my weakened state, I wasn't sure I could lift it. Father saw my glance and crawled faster. I grabbed the lid's edge and strained to lift it. My muscles screamed, still weak from the compounds. The lid rose a few inches, then fell back. Father was nearly within reach. I tried again, pouring everything into lifting the lid. This time, I got it to knee height before my strength failed. It fell toward Father, who rolled aside just in time. The heavy wood thudded where he'd been. He used the vehicle to pull himself upright, balancing on his good leg. I ran, or stumbled, toward the open pit. Maybe I could use it as a barrier. My legs moved in an unsteady lurch, but it was faster than his injured hobble. I reached the pit and turned to face him. He was using the vehicle for support, inching toward me. The hole yawned behind me, Faith's faint whimpers echoing from below. I picked up a stone and threw it at Father. My aim was poor, but made him duck. He let go of the vehicle and hopped toward me on one leg, arms outstretched for balance. It would have been absurd if it weren't so terrifying. Even injured, even hopping, he pursued with relentless focus. I threw another stone, hitting his shoulder. He grunted, but kept coming. I backed up until my heels were at the pit's edge. One wrong step, and I'd joined Faith in the dark. Father saw my position and grinned. He lunged, tried to push me backward. I sidestepped at the last second, and his momentum carried him to the edge. He flailed his arms, trying to regain balance. I could have pushed him then. One small nudge, and he would have fallen, but I froze. That hesitation cost me. Father fell forward on his solid ground instead of backward into the pit. He grabbed my ankle as he fell, pulling me down with him. We landed hard, him partially on top of me. His weight pressed me into the dirt. I struggled beneath him, but he had leverage now. His hands found my throat again. This time, I couldn't reach anything to defend myself. My vision darkened at the edges. In desperation, I drove my knee into his injured knee. He screamed and rolled off, clutching his leg. I gasped for air, my throat feeling crushed. Every breath was torment, but I forced myself to keep moving. I crawled toward the vehicle, thinking of Faith trapped below. I had to survive to save her. Father's hand caught my foot just as I reached the vehicle's wheel. His grip was weaker, but still resolute. I kicked back, my heel striking his face. I heard his nose break with a wet crunch. He released me, hands covering his face. Blood poured between his fingers. He tried to speak, but only gurgled. I pulled myself up, using the vehicle's door handle. My legs trembled, but held. I looked back at Father, still on the ground, blood pooling beneath his face. He rolled onto his side, spitting blood. His eyes met mine, still burning with rage despite his injuries. He tried to stand, but his knee wouldn't support him. He began crawling again, leaving a blood trail in the dirt. I stumbled to the driver's door and tried the handle. Locked, naturally. The openers were somewhere at the pit's bottom. I searched frantically for something to break the window. Father was getting closer, his crawling relentless despite his pain. I found a large stone near the front wheel. I hefted it, my arms shaking with effort. Father was only feet away, reaching for my leg. I brought the stone down on the driver's window. It bounced off, the reinforced glass holding firm. Father's fingers brushed my ankle. I stepped back and swung the stone again, putting my whole body into it. This time the window cracked, webbing from the impact. One more hit, and it shattered inward. Glass fragments covering the seat. I reached through the broken window and unlocked the door. Father grabbed my leg as I opened it. I fell half into the vehicle, my upper body on the seat while he held my legs. He started pulling me back out, his grip slick with blood. I grabbed the steering wheel with both hands, even my broken fingers gripping despite the pain. Father pulled harder, and I felt my hold slipping. In desperation, I kicked backward with both feet, striking his broken nose. He released me with a cry of pain. I scrambled fully into the vehicle and slammed the door, locking it immediately. Father pounded on the window with his fists, leaving bloody prints on the glass. His face was a mask of blood and fury. I searched the vehicle frantically for openers, knowing they weren't there. The ignition was empty, the console bare. Father stopped pounding and looked for something to break the remaining windows. I had to think fast. The vehicle's interior light showed various items Father had brought. Cord, water containers, some preserved food. In the back, I saw something that quickened my pulse. A mobile device, likely forgotten in his haste to recapture us. It was connected to a charger plugged into the vehicle's power outlet. I climbed between the seats to reach it, my body aching with every move. There's something odd about how Father keeps rising no matter his injuries. I'm curious why he's so fixated on pushing me toward that pit despite his severe wounds. The way he keeps crawling with a broken knee and smashed nose makes me wonder what drives him to ignore such pain. Father had found a large stick and was nearing the passenger window. I grabbed the device as he swung. The window shattered inward, showering me with glass. The device was locked, requiring a code. I tried obvious combinations. His birth date, our address, all zeros. Nothing worked. Father reached through the broken window, trying to unlock the door. I scooted back to avoid his grasp, still fumbling with the device. Then I recalled something. During our monthly cleansings, I'd seen him unlock his device once. The pattern was simple, a straight line down the center. I tried it and the device unlocked. My hands trembled as I dialed emergency services. Father had given up on the door and was climbing through the window. His upper body was inside, broken glass cutting him as he pulled through. I kicked at his head while trying to tell the operator our location, but I didn't know where we were. Father had driven for hours to reach this place. I could only describe the pit, the isolated location, and beg them to track the device. The operator assured me they were tracing the call, but would take time. Father grabbed my foot, his bloody hand slipping but holding. I dropped the device to defend myself, hearing the operator's voice asking if I was still there. Father pulled himself further into the vehicle, his face a terrifying mask of resolve and pain. I grabbed a water container and smashed it against his head. The plastic container did little damage, but the water mixed with the blood on his face, getting in his eyes. He blinked rapidly, momentarily blinded. I used that moment to grab the device again, shouting our situation to the operator. Father lunged blindly, his hands grasping. I rolled into the vehicle's rear, putting the seats between us. He pulled himself fully through the window and turned to face me. We stared across the vehicle's interior, him bloodied and injured but still dangerous, me exhausted and terrified, but finally clear-headed enough to think. The operator was saying units were dispatched, but I knew they'd never arrive in time. Father started climbing over the seats toward me. I grabbed the remaining cord and threw loops at him, tangling his arms. He fought against it, but his injuries slowed him. I kept the device pressed to my ear, the operator's voice my only connection to safety. Father's bloodied face twisted as he struggled against the cord, his determination unbroken despite the pain. Entangling his limbs, I pressed myself against the rear doors of the vehicle, gripping the mobile device tightly as the operator kept posing questions I struggled to answer. The compounds had mostly dissipated, leaving me with stark awareness of our predicament. Faith remained trapped in that pit, and rescue was still too distant. Father freed one arm from the cord and lunged again. I shifted sideways, causing him to crash into the rear doors. The collision made him groan, his wounded knee giving way. He slumped onto the vehicle's floor, breathing heavily. Blood from his shattered nose soaked his clothing, creating dark patches that spread with each labored breath. I scrambled over him while he was down, aiming for the front of the vehicle. My fractured fingers ached as I maneuvered between the seats, but I pushed through the pain. Father seized my ankle just as I reached the driver's seat. His grip was weaker now, slick with blood and sweat. I kicked back forcefully, my heel striking his shoulder. He lost his hold and fell backward. I turned to see him struggling to rise, his movements slowed by blood loss and fatigue. The operator was still speaking, mentioning GPS tracking and estimated arrival times. I set the device on speaker and placed it on the dashboard, needing both hands free. Father crawled forward again, dragging his injured leg. His resolve remained unbroken despite his wounds. I searched the vehicle's interior desperately for anything useful. The glove box held only documents and a broken pen. Under the passenger seat, my fingers found a small toolkit. I grabbed a screwdriver just as Father reached the front seats. He tried to pull himself up using the headrest, but his strength was waning. I held the screwdriver defensively, my hand trembling. We both knew I couldn't bring myself to use it as a weapon, but the threat might delay him. He paused, assessing the situation. Blood continued to drip from his nose, and his injured knee couldn't bear weight, but his eyes still burned with familiar fury. He reached for the screwdriver, moving slowly, testing my determination. I pulled back, keeping it out of reach. The operator's voice crackled through the speaker, asking if I was still there. I confirmed hoarsely, my throat raw from earlier strangling. Father used my distraction to snatch the device from the dashboard. He held it up, his thumb hovering over the end call button. Our eyes locked. If he ended the call, the authorities might lose our position. Faith would remain in that pit. We'd both vanish forever. His thumb inched closer to the screen. I dropped the screwdriver and lunged for the device. We grappled for control, the device slipping between our bloody hands. It fell, bouncing off the gear shift and landing near the pedals. We both dove for it, colliding in the tight space. Father's weight pressed down on me as we struggled. His blood dripped onto my face, mixing with my sweat and tears. I reached the device first, but he grabbed my wrist, trying to wrench it away. His grip remained strong despite his injuries. I bit his hand, tasting metal. He jerked back with a curse, giving me space to roll away with the device. The operator was asking what was happening, having heard the struggle. I gasped that we were still here, still needed help. My sister was in a pit. Father slumped against the passenger seat, his energy finally fading. His breathing was uneven, his face pale beneath the blood. But he wasn't done. He started inching toward the broken driver's side window, seemingly planning to exit the vehicle. I realized his intent. If he got out, he could block the doors, trap me inside until I had to emerge. Or worse, he might find something to shatter the remaining windows. I couldn't let him gain that edge. I climbed over the center console and grabbed his shirt as he reached the window. We struggled again, but his movements were sluggish now. I pulled him back from the window, both of us collapsing onto the driver's seat in an exhausted heap. The device had fallen again during our struggle. I could hear the operator's distant voice asking for updates. Father and I lay there momentarily, both too drained to continue fighting immediately. His blood loss was severe now, his face ghostly. He made one more attempt to reach the window. I wrapped my arms around his waist, using my body weight to hold him back. He was too weak to break free this time. We remained locked in that position, him reaching for escape while I clung with all I had left. Minutes felt like hours. Father's struggles weakened until he stopped trying. He slumped back, his breathing shallow and labored. I kept holding on, not trusting his stillness. The operator's voice continued from wherever the device had fallen, a lifeline to the outside world. I heard something in the distance. Sirens. Faint, but growing louder. Father heard them too. His body tensed, and he made one last desperate attempt to break free. But his strength was gone. He could barely lift his arms. The sirens grew louder, closer. I saw flashing lights in the distance, cutting through the darkness. Father's breathing became more ragged. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes still defiant despite everything. His lips moved as if to speak, but no words came. Multiple vehicles arrived, their beams illuminating the scene. I heard doors slamming, voices issuing commands. Someone approached the vehicle cautiously. I called out that we were inside, that my sister was in the pit, that they needed to hurry. An officer appeared at the broken window, taking in the scene. Father and I were still entangled in the driver's seat, both covered in blood. The officer called for medical support while asking if either of us had weapons. I shook my head, too exhausted to speak. More officers arrived. They carefully opened the passenger door, assessing the situation. Two of them gently pulled Father out first. He didn't resist, too weak from blood loss to fight. They laid him on the ground and began first aid on his injuries. Someone helped me out next. My legs collapsed the moment I touched ground, and two officers supported me. I pointed frantically at the pit, tried to explain about faith. My words were jumbled, but they understood enough. A rescue team was already setting up equipment around the pit. They had proper gear, harnesses, cords, powerful lights. One rappelled down, while others managed safety lines. I watched, holding my breath, as they vanished into the darkness where Faith had been for what felt like hours. The wait was excruciating. Medics tried to examine me, but I pushed them away, needing to see Faith brought up first. They wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and tended to my fractured fingers while I kept my eyes fixed on the pit's opening. Finally, movement. The rescue team hauled someone up. Faith emerged, strapped to a rescue board, unconscious but breathing. Medics rushed to her, checking vitals and starting 4 fluids. She was alive, battered and traumatized, but alive. They loaded Faith into an ambulance first. I insisted on riding with her, despite medics wanting to treat me separately. As we pulled away, I saw Father being loaded into another ambulance, officers standing guard. He was conscious but restrained, his face a mask of defeat beneath the blood. Device codes in a life-or-death struggle? Typical father move. Even his security choices are predictable. Watching her recall that simple swipe pattern while he's crawling through broken glass is like a twisted survival game. The screwdriver standoff shows she can't match his violence, even armed. But biting works just fine when someone's trying to steal your lifeline. At the hospital, they separated us for treatment. My fractured fingers needed setting and casting. They cleaned and stitched cuts, took scans for internal injuries. I kept asking about Faith. Nurses assured me she was being treated, that she'd be okay. Hours later, they let me see her. She was sedated but stable, connected to monitors. The doctor explained she had hypothermia from the cold pit, with bruising from the fall, but no life-threatening injuries. The psychological scars would take longer to heal. Officers came to take my statement once doctors cleared me. I recounted everything. The years underground, the initial rescue, father violating bail and abducting us, his pit plan. They documented it all, building their case. Father would never get bail again. Over the next days, Faith and I stayed in the hospital. Our foster guardians arrived, notified by authorities. They'd been searching since our disappearance, working with officials to track Father. They stayed with us in shifts, ensuring we were never alone. Faith woke fully on the third day. Her first word was my name, reaching for my hand. I held her with my good hand, my casted fingers resting uselessly. We didn't need words. We'd survived another darkness together. Child Services evaluated our placement, but our foster guardians fought to keep us, arguing we needed stability after our ordeal. The court agreed. We'd stay with the family that showed us true care. Father's trial moved quickly. He pleaded guilty to avoid a harsher sentence, but the judge gave him 25 years. Mother's parental rights were permanently revoked. We were finally, legally, free from them. No more fear of pursuit. Our foster guardians helped us change our surnames, a fresh start with new identities. Faith chose Sunshine as her middle name, a bold defiance of our dark past. Ipik don formina. New beginnings after the longest night. Recovery wasn't straightforward. Faith developed severe claustrophobia, unable to tolerate confined spaces. I couldn't sleep without lights on, my body equating darkness with danger. We attended therapy twice weekly, slowly processing years of trauma. But we had windows now, real windows, letting in fresh air and natural light. Our foster guardians never questioned our need for open curtains or multiple night lights. They understood some fears were hard-earned. Faith returned to school, making friends unaware of our past. I earned my GED and enrolled in community college, studying social work. I wanted to help kids trapped in their own prisons, literal or figurative. Our foster guardians supported every step. The pit property was sealed by authorities. The land was later sold, its grim history disclosed. Father's vehicle was impounded as evidence. Physical reminders of that night faded, though memories remained vivid. We testified at Father's sentencing. Faith spoke of the underground years and the pit's terror. I described the abduction and assault. Father showed no remorse, still believing we were his property. The judge added 5 years for his lack of accountability. Our brothers never contacted us. They'd been too deeply indoctrinated by Father's views. We mourned that loss, but built our chosen family. Our foster siblings became true siblings in every meaningful way. Years passed. Faith graduated high school with honors, then college with an education degree. She wanted to teach kindergarten, showing young kids the kindness we'd never known. I completed my social work degree and worked with abuse survivors. We lived together through college, not ready to be apart. Our apartment had large windows and too many lamps. Visitors sometimes noted how bright we kept things, but we just smiled. They couldn't grasp how precious light was after years in darkness. Faith met someone in her senior year, a kind soul who heard her story without recoil. He understood her need for open spaces and bright rooms. Their wedding was outdoors under midday sun, shadow-free. I found love, too, with someone who'd survived their own childhood trauma. We understood each other's night terrors and vigilance. Our wedding was at sunrise, celebrating new starts. Neither of us had children for years, fearing we'd repeat patterns. But Faith eventually announced her pregnancy. We cried, scared and hopeful. When her daughter was born, she named her Aurora, another word for dawn. I became an aunt, spoiling Aurora endlessly. Faith was everything our parents weren't. Patient, loving, protective without control. Watching her parent with grace helped me believe I could too. 2 years later, I had my son. We raised our children in light, teaching them they deserved to exist fully. No underground prisons, no shadows, no shame for being. They grew up confident and loved, never doubting their worth or right to sunlight. Father died in prison during his 15th year. We learned through official channels, feeling only relief. Mother passed years later in a care home, alone. We attended neither funeral. Some ties were meant to stay severed. Faith became a cherished kindergarten teacher, known for making every child feel valued. I specialized in aiding trafficking survivors, understanding darkness in ways colleagues couldn't. We turned our trauma into purpose, refusing to let it limit us. Thanks for walking through this with me. Here's hoping your stories have fewer shadows than mine. Until we cross paths again, keep the light on. It helps more than you know. Top 9 AI tools you can't ignore. 1. ChatGPT.com. Solves anything. 2. Rank.ai. White label SEO and PPC. 3. Midjourney.com. Generates art. 4. Replaceit.com. Writes and runs code. 5. Silabi.io. Creates AI videos. 6. Sounddraw.io. Produces music in seconds. 7. Fleeky.ai. Turns text into TikToks. 8. Sterry.ai. Creates AI avatars. 9. Slidesai.io. Makes presentations for you.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.